first question, I hope, is an easy one. We want to get to know you. What should a voter know about you?
Something I think the voters should know about me is that I am a constitutional alternative to the two parties. We have had the two parties fighting against each other for so long that we seem to think it's normal. The people are who is supposed to be in charge of the government. The first three words of the Constitution, we the people. And we the people, some of us are getting really mad about what's going on with the parties. And I'm ready to stand up for the people instead of this two-party system that we have where we're not getting the representation we need. And I'm ready to stand up and represent the people.
Ms. Malloy, the next question goes to you first, and you'll have a minute to answer this question about water. Utah's rapid population growth and agricultural demands strain our limited water resources. Now, as a member of Congress, how will you work with federal, state, and local entities to craft innovative water?
First, I think this is a state issue for sure, not a federal government issue. And it needs to be addressed county by county. The Colorado River Compact that Utah has with the other states, Utah is very proactive in making sure that we are keeping that updated so that we have contingency plans. And we're doing a really good job of it ourselves. I don't think the federal government needs to be involved in that really at all. Water is a finite resource, and we need to be good stewards of that resource to make sure that everybody has the water they need. Some people recommend getting rid of some of the agriculture. That's just a definite no here in southern Utah, especially because we're very agricultural down here. They say that they'll have more water that way. I'm not sure exactly what to do, but I think that we have people in state government that are better fit to figure that out for us.
With land and water issues for a moment, so this is still going to go first to Ms. Malloy. This question about public lands. The state of Utah is funding advertisements that take a stand on one side of an issue that really does divide Utahns. The effort is called Stand for Our Lands, asking residents to support the state's lawsuit to gain control of much of the land that's currently under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Land Management. Do you support that state effort, and if so, why?
Public lands are a very touchy subject here in Utah. 66% of Utah is managed by the federal government. They call it BLM, which is Bureau of Land Management, not the other one. So what we need to do is we need to look at exactly what the state is trying to push for on this. They're using tax dollars to pay for all this advertising to get management of our land back, but I don't really know what it is that their intentions are when they do get it back. And I think we need to have a very comprehensive plan before people can really get behind what the state is trying to do. So yes, we should get our lands back, but as far as supporting what the state's doing right now, I don't trust the key players in it. So I would not support what they're doing right now till we had a more comprehensive plan of what we're going to do with the public lands so that it wouldn't affect a lot of the things that are going in the agricultural, because this southern area is full of public lands. And we want to make sure that they don't do something that's going to cause a problem with the agricultural communities that we have down here.
But seniors often live on fixed incomes. And so when we talk about debt reduction, experts on the debt say that in order to actually reduce it, you'd have to cut defense, Social Security, Medicare, and other mandatory spending, or increase taxes. So what do you do? Which of those is palatable to you?
I think that we have a third option. Mandatory spending is called mandatory spending for a reason. It's something that is mandatory that we need. Defense, we need defense. Social Security, that was taken from the people with the knowledge that the government was going to give it back to them when they were retired. So Medicare and Social Security, mandatory spending. It's called that for a reason. It's mandatory. That does not mean that you have to raise the taxes. There are plenty of other places that we can make cuts. And I don't know exactly where I would start, but I can guarantee that all the departments that we have in this government that are not producing anything that is beneficial to the people, but only to the government, it would be a great place to start. And that's where I will start looking to be able to fund our mandatory and not raise taxes at the same time.
All right, and I think the next question from student Ben Johnson here is going to be addressed to Mr. Woodward first, and it is, you've teed this up nicely, both of you.
Thank you for taking my question. What is your stance on U.S. military aid to Israel and the Ukraine? What restrictions, if any, should come with this aid?
Let's break this down. The war in Ukraine, very different from the war over in Israel. First off, we've sent them billions of dollars. We've sent them more money than what we can afford to send. And the people in the United States are having problems with just buying groceries because our inflation rate is so high. Yet we can afford billions of dollars to send it to Ukraine so that they can win this war. And it's not working for me. I don't think we should be doing that at all. It reminds me of a story about Davy Crockett, who was in Congress, and there was a fire and close to DC, and there were widows from this fire killing their spouses. And when Davy Crockett went back home, they said they weren't going to vote for him, and he couldn't understand why. And they said, the money was not yours to give. He says, but we have so much. But that doesn't matter. It wasn't the Congress or the federal government to decide if the widows got that money. It was still up to the people, and they were not consulted. So it wasn't theirs to give. And I see that as a historic thing now, that the big thing is the federal government decides we're going to give away all this money, but they don't ask the people about it. And the people are suffering now with inflation caused by that government while our government is still giving away money. Now, the situation with Israel, I think that there is something that we can do, and it is the people doing it. It's not the federal government. I had some gentlemen from the Israeli army. They came and visited our church. They were here in the United States for some training exercises. And they came and visited our church, and they talked about the fact that the churches in America are sending things that the soldiers need to be able to fight this war. And the money that the federal government's sending to the Israeli government, they're not seeing much of the effects of that as soldiers. Now, I don't know what Israel's doing with the money, but I think that if we could help support them in their fight, that they would be better off than if we just dump money in there. There has to be a better way of helping people to defend themselves other than just dumping money. And Israel and the United States have had a long-standing relationship from the time that they helped Israel become their own state. So I do have a little bit more feeling for Israel than I do for the Ukraine, because all I've seen Ukraine doing is we're sending money and money and money, and we aren't seeing any results or return on that. So that's kind of where I'm at on the sending money. We don't need to do it. We can do other resources.
Our next question comes from social media. We invited questioners to send in possible questions. This comes from Travis Vallejo on the platform X. And he asks, what will you do in Washington to help keep the quality of life at a high level in your district and the extremely fast-growing southern Utah area where we stand now?
At the federal level, there's really not much that we can do to maintain the high quality of life in southern Utah. That is a definite state and local issue. So the best thing I could do would be to keep the government from putting their hands on Utah by keeping the federal and the state government separated like they are supposed to be constitutionally.
All right, we're going going to move on to another issue. This question going to Mr. Woodward first. One of the most important issues to voters this year is immigration. Now, most Utahns weren't born when the last major immigration reform passed Congress. A comprehensive negotiated bipartisan reform package was defeated earlier this year. So in a closely divided Congress, what do you see as essential for immigration reform, and where can you see reasonable compromise?
People are always talking about immigration reform. Right now, we don't need to worry so much about reform as we do worrying about the invasion that we have going on at the southern border. Not only are people coming into this country illegally, but they're coming in not only from Mexico, but from the Middle East and China, and we really do have an invasion, and we need to stop that first. So we need to get that under control before we can think about reforming anything. Currently, we do have immigration laws. People may or may not agree with them, and that's okay. The biggest problem we have is that they are not being enforced by the executive branch that is responsible for executing the laws that have been passed by the legislator. Laws have been passed, laws are on the books. We need to get this illegal immigration stopped, because legal immigration is something that is very beneficial to our country. Illegal immigration, people storming over our borders, is an invasion. We need to stop this invasion, and once that has stopped, we can take a hold of what is really going on so that we can see if we can reopen up people immigrating to the United States in a legal manner, and what changes need to be made at that time to make it an easier pathway for people. But at this point, there should be no pathway. We need to shut down all immigration until we get this situation under control that the executive department has literally allowed to happen.
First, we're talking about the Congress and the situation that you would be moving into. If elected, you'd be part of either a very narrow majority or minority in a closely divided House. Now, how would you take on the responsibility of the importance of your votes, which are magnified? An individual can have sway if they move one way or another. So how do you take that on in a closely divided Congress to benefit Utah's 2nd District?
This is actually a pretty easy one for me because I'm not on either side. It's a House divided. So I look specifically at the constitutionality of whatever bill is coming to the floor. We have specific delegated powers in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. If it's something that we are supposed to be doing, I go to the people and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think about it? And I would vote how my district wants me to vote. Otherwise, we just don't vote on it. It's a no. If it's not for the people, if it's not something I'm delegated to do by the people that elected me, then it's a definite no. So most of the bills that are going through Congress are bills that have no constitutional basis. And if there's no constitutional basis that are enumerated in Article 1, Section 8, and the rest of Article 1, then there's no reason for me to have to take sides. I'm taking the side of the people and standing on the Constitution. So this would be really easy for me.
To the questions. This next question starts with Ms. Malloy. We've seen very large bills covering an array of issues. You've talked about omnibus bills, both budget and issue bills in Congress. If you agree with a majority of the policies in a bill, but you disagree with other portions, do you vote against it? Do you vote in support as a compromise? Where is the line?
Where is the line? The line is that omnibus bills are bad. No to every omnibus bill that comes along. If we need compromise, we need to separate that omnibus bill into the individual bills that they are, and it may take a little bit of time, but we will vote on what is necessary and what is not. We don't just go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to compromise on something that I am totally against and is unconstitutional just because something in there is constitutional. I would not do that. I'd say no to every omnibus bill because I sit here as a citizen and I watch the way that they compromise the Constitution and what the people want so that they can get what they want. And I will not vote for any omnibus bill. If you want my vote on something that's in that bill, then you need to separate it and make it so that we have reason to support it.
Okay, so this next question goes to you, Mr. Woodward, first. Do you believe incivility is a problem in American politics today? And if so, what would you do to increase civility in the public square?
I do believe incivility is a problem in American politics. People cannot talk to each other. When we created the Congress, it was set up so that all the states could debate about what was best. We don't do that. We don't talk to each other anymore. We argue and we call people names, and there is no civility. The only way to have civility is to actually hear what people have to say and be able to understand their side of it so that you can explain to them what your side of it is. And at that point, you guys can start discussing ways to resolve problems. You cannot resolve problems when everyone is against each other. You need to have some way to come together and discuss it as rational adults that are representing real people. And that's what I think we need to do. And that's what I would do, is be rational and civil with people so that we could actually accomplish things that need to be done rather than have the fighting that is going on now.
The U.S. Supreme Court, this is about abortion. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision, allowing states to restrict abortion if they choose. Utah does have an abortion law that's currently on hold by the courts. If it goes into effect, it bans nearly all abortions. Our history in this country is marked by moments when we decided that rights were either too fundamental or not for a state border to change what those rights are. The right to vote and the right to marry come to mind. Now, is abortion, does it fall into that category? And if not, how is it different?
Abortion is a very hot topic. I personally believe that abortion is wrong, that people need to be responsible for their actions. I think that women and men need to both be responsible if there is a situation of pregnancy. I think that each state should be able to make their own laws regarding this particular issue. I believe the Supreme Court was right in giving it back to the states to make those decisions. And each state has a right to make their own decision. Utah law may not be what California wants. And if California wants something different, it is their right as their own state to make their own laws. We do not need the federal government saying that every state has to do the same thing. That was why we had the 10th Amendment, is to make sure that the states were able to make their own laws, and the people of those states get to vote on what they want. And what people in California want and people in Utah want may be very different. People in New York and people in Nebraska, we're all different, and we have different ideologies, and that's why all the states are different, and that's why we need to let every state make their own decision and not try to control what everyone in the country is doing.
And this will be a 1-minute response. Should members of Congress be required to publicly state the names of companies they have invested in? And if so, why?
Absolutely, yes. Members of Congress should have to disclose companies that they invest in, because it will make people aware if there is a conflict of interest with that congressperson when they are passing laws. Maybe they need to abstain if it would benefit them personally for them to vote on it. I think that transparency is of the utmost importance, and I believe that by them having to disclose what companies they invest in and where their money's going and how it would affect their vote is very important for the people to know.
To you, and this will be a 30-second answer I'll be asking for. Do you support term limits for members of Congress, and how long do you plan to serve if you are reelected?
Term limits. It's one of my favorite questions. In Article 1, it says that Congress will serve for 2-year terms. That is the limit of our term. The only reason we have terms longer than that is because the people re-elect them to stay there. Now, the whole thing was, if you did not like the person that was representing you and you did not feel like you were being represented, they had very short limits so that the people could elect someone else to go to Congress that they felt would better represent them. So we already have term limits. It's up to the people to enforce them. All you have to do is stop voting for people that you don't like and put people in that you do. And if you decide once they're there that you don't like them, vote them out. You are the ones in charge of term limits. I would love for us to be able to say, this representative is not voting the way that I want, let's vote him out, and have the backing of all the people, rather than hearing, oh, but they're in my party, I have to vote for them. You don't. You set the term limits. So if you want term limits, start voting people out so that we can get a government that we feel represents us.
This question is going to go to you first, but it comes from one of our viewers who sent it in via the Utah Debate Commission website. So Utah's Millard County, this is from Christine Wells, in the 2nd District, is emerging as a major source for geothermal energy production in the U.S. How might Congress further incentivize this non-carbon producing energy source in Utah and beyond?
Geothermal energy is very interesting. There was a booth at the Beaver County Fair this year when I was there, and I went and I spoke to the people there to get a better understanding of how it worked and what was going on with it. And it is a really good energy source. It does take a lot of water, though, and the 2nd District, we do have a water problem. But that aside, geothermal energy seems like it could be a really good source of energy. Interestingly enough, though, the geothermal energy that is produced here in Beaver County is all going to California. So Utah's not even seeing the benefit of it. How do I feel about subsidizing these companies that are doing this? I don't think that we should be subsidizing companies at all when it comes to people having their own business. These are companies that are coming in to build projects that are going to be beneficial to the communities, but they're going to be profit-making enterprises for these businesses. And by subsidizing them, we're giving them a foot up over other companies that may want to come in and are not going to be getting that. I think subsidies are just stuff that the government shouldn't be doing. I think if people want to make their companies work, they need to make them work, and the government should not have their hand in free enterprise. So no subsidies.
And so I'm going to give you 15 seconds to answer these. If you need a little more time, that's okay, but you'll get the picture. And so, Ms. Malloy, this first one goes to you. Can you tell us about a member of the opposite political party, so a Democrat, currently active in politics, who you like and respect?
I like Thomas Massie. He's from Kentucky, and he has a very constitutional voting record. He has a lot of the same ideologies as I do, and I have a lot of respect for a man that's willing to vote constitutionally and still stay in the background and not try to get all of this publicity that these other politicians want everybody to look at them. He seems to be a real man of the people, and I really like that. And if I'm in Congress, I can't wait to meet him.
Now, a very tough question. It's going to start with you, Mr. Woodward. What's a hidden gem within Utah's 2nd District? What's a place you really love in this district?
I'm not sure that these are really that hidden because a lot of people down here in southern Utah know about them, but they are very unique. You've got the Duck Creek Ice Cave, where you can go and see ice in the bottom of this cave year round. It's quite interesting. And the other one is Cascade Falls, right by Navajo Lake. Navajo Lake actually feeds the waterfalls through lava tubes that have been there for years and years. And it's a great little hike, and it's just a fun day to just go out, relax, and see some beautiful scenery, and it ends at a waterfall. So those are the two things that I would consider hidden by people that aren't from here.
You also 30 seconds. What is a job you had when you were younger that taught you something important, and what did it teach you?
When I was younger, I worked as a waitress, and I think that I learned the most from that job and how to talk to people. Even when people were not respectful to me, I was always respectful to them. I would listen to what they wanted and make sure that they got what they needed. And I think that that was something that stuck with me a long time, to be able to communicate with people in a way that was non-aggressive and where people can have their needs met and feel respected, even when it didn't always start out that way.
And this next question is going to be just 10-second responses because we're just about to closing statements. Ms. Malloy, this goes to you. I want you to recommend a book and tell us why.
The first book that popped into my head, Atlas Shrugged. Everyone should read it. It tells everything you need to know of what not to let the government do so that you can actually be successful in life. And I would recommend it to anybody because I've read it several times and it's just one of my favorite books.
Now, we've reached the end of the debate. A random drawing held earlier determined that the first closing statement goes to Ms. Malloy.
For my closing statement, I'm going to say thank you for everybody that has taken the time to watch any or all of these videos as far as what my answers to the debate questions would have been had I been invited to the debate. If you are curious as to why I wasn't, I have an explanation video on the debate commission from last year that you can watch. The most important thing to do, though, is make sure that you do vote. Be an informed voter and take everything into consideration before you mark those ballots. If you are mailing in your ballots, make sure you get them postmarked by hand at the post office the day before election, which is November 4th, would be the postmark date for it to be counted if you are going to mail it in. If you are skeptical about the mail because of what happened at the primaries, you would be better off just taking them to the drop box, or if you don't want to drop it, you can actually vote in person if you choose to. So those are all options for you. Make sure that you get your ballots in on time so that your voice can be heard. If you have any more questions for me that were not answered in these videos, you can go to my website, CassieForCongress.com, and it has my phone number, email, and you can even leave comments on the website that I can answer there. So if you have any questions for me or would like to know more about where I stand on a specific issue, just give me a call or an email and ask, and I will definitely let you know. So everybody have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed and got the information that you needed to help you be a more educated voter and make your vote count. Thank you.